Culture is such a fascinating thing. The way people bandy around these broader touchstones and get caught up in this group imagination is fascinating. However, in media, particularly in interpretation of it outside of America and the UK, is often portrayed through a few distinct angles: religion, politics, mass tragedy. Despelote has a very different vision for its cultural roots, and this makes it perhaps one of the most special games I played this year. Despelote is a game about a kid growing up with a love of football following his home country of Ecuador's successful run into the qualifying stages of the World Cup in 2002. However, it's far more about Ecuador and our main character Julian than football. Julian is a self insert for one of the game's central devs, and it plays loosely with the truth to conjure the feelings he has around his childhood. In a sense, it kind of reminds me of games like Beginner's Guide. It's a football game that you can love even if you don't like football, an excuse to reminisce and ruminate. It's one of those games that has such a distinct voice, tone, and cohesive vision that it's hard not to feel all caught up in it as you play. I think a biopic, a documentary, and sometimes even a pure work of fiction fails when you can fully spoil it by simply looking at the Wikipedia page. Art takes many forms and often relies on many senses. If a game, movie, or book doesn't take advantage of the medium it's in to get the most out of the narrative it wants to tell you, you can spot it very quickly. In case you haven't Googled it, Ecuador didn't win the 2002 World Cup. In fact, they got knocked out at the group stage, placing 24th. This knowledge doesn't negatively impact the game in the slightest. In fact, in a lot of ways, I'd say it makes it even better. With that out of the way, here's what I saw when I played Despelote and why you should probably play it too. Perhaps the most striking part of booting up Despelote is its visuals. Taking real life scans and pictures as a base, it all has this scratchy, hazy style with extra colours thrown over the top, like a dithered version of a core memory. This serves two central purposes. One, given the game is so nostalgic, that fuzziness does a good job at giving you something grounding and reminiscent without being able to place the texture and finer details. Secondly, interactable objects stand out with a brilliant white, making sense of all that visual noise. It sets a tone that is carried by the game's writing and feel. Despelote feels considered and broad in the ways it moves from topic to topic and how Julian, an 8-year-old boy, sees the explosion of football in his home country. It talks about a speedwalking phenomenon that came off the back of an Olympics performance for Ecuador and how a similar sense of national pride found its roots in football. It talks about politics, not abstractly, but as necessary context. The swap to the dollar, the establishing and refining of American soft power, even the politics of Ecuador itself, and how football enunciated the jarring tonal differences between the light fun activity of kicking a ball in a net and the deadly money driven practice of rivalry and betting. There's this sinister undercurrent the game touches on through analysing a crime film directed by the main characters and by extension one of the main developers' father, and it touches on the dangers of the real life park that the game is ostensibly about. It doesn't feel fatalistic or overdramatic so much as an expression of the pain that comes from seeing something dark in beautiful things. There's something rather unifying about the whole thing. It's all in Spanish with English subtitles, and you will miss some sentences or words if you aren't paying attention, yet its tone and style is so familiar it's downright comforting. That urge as a kid to push the boundaries and do the things your parents don't want just because it looks a little fun. As the player, that instinct is indulged, and your mum does a good job at feeling not angry, just disappointed. In a dev check-in with the team in 2024, Julian said the game's dialogue is largely a product of improvised conversation with friends and family, and this gives the game such a mundane warmth. Conversations aren't big, they don't feel designed to make you think about a specific thing, and their goal isn't to push you towards the climax of the story. It's all intended to wrap you up in a world, and in a sense, this hits at the main intent of Despelote. Rather than describing how freshly washed and dried clothes felt like to put on as a kid, it aims to just give you the smell and let you paint the rest of the picture. It's an engaging and wonderful atmosphere that feels unlike anything else I played this year so far. And this is why I think Despelote works so well. It feels like the desperate, ever aching need to connect to another human being and a desire to show you a feeling. The gameplay is largely split up between two main types: a top down football game that you play on a console as you eavesdrop on the conversation of loved ones, and first person exploration done while you wait for your mum to pick you up or your recess to finish. By losing out on some conversations thanks to your childlike desire to play football, rewatching my gameplay footage came with it small revelations about information taught in classes and conversations had in the middle of other conversations. That tone it evokes of just living in someone else's memory is made so much better by the fact that you can miss it all. Gameplay feels both awkward and satisfying. It's recommended to play Despelote on a controller, and you kick a ball in front of you by swinging the right analog stick in the right direction you want to shoot. Like actually kicking a ball, a powerful hit requires you winding your leg back first. I felt like an 8-year-old playing football, and by that I mean kind of rubbish, but just good enough to feel accomplished when I knocked down a bottle or gave a really nice pass to another kid. There's something about passing a ball back and forth that just feels like a great way to open up a line of communication. It's a group activity that is just mindless yet social enough to facilitate conversation, and the few flashbacks the game does to Julian's life in the wake of that young football obsessed kid feel sad in a very subtle way. Those little breaks you have from the game's story, the cheeky couple of hours before your mum comes and picks you up, are made of tiny little worlds that you can entirely miss out on if you want to. You can go and pet a dog, you can giggle at a couple kissing in the park, or cause light mischief. If you really want, you can just go watch Ecuador's matches in the World Cup through a TV in a shop window. In that dev check-in, Julian talks about struggling to make this a game because games are hard, but also games require many intentional things to actually sell to a potential consumer. He mentions talking to producer and developer Gabe and how they have both had this experience with game ideas. Together with musician Sebastian, they have created a game that is coherent and rather excellent. Those development woes don't come through in the final product at all. That music is sparse, but it kicks at just the right moment at the end of the game to leave perhaps the biggest impression in all 2 or so hours it takes to finish. Sound design as a whole in Despelote is considered and great. There's this cliche people say about how you know a bassist is good because you can barely hear them when you don't focus on it, and though I think that's a tad reductive, I do think this is true of Despelote's sound. With a pair of headphones wrapped around your ears, the atmosphere is palpable. I can think of two distinct moments where I just sat, closed my eyes, and took in the sounds. I think this is something the team want players to take from the experience. Julian talks about the fact that Ecuador is relatively underrepresented in the grand scale of video games, and the game as a microcosm of a single boy's experience growing up there. Despelote sells its vision with confidence. Almost every element of it feels so wholly itself. Going back to the gameplay, it's not just the kicking element of playing football that feels strange to do. As you hover over a ball, you start to dribble. You lose control of the ball if you sprint or if you dare to turn too quickly. This makes it unruly to control. However, when you don't have a football at your legs, you can interact with the scenery or simply wave at people walking by. You can look down to see the time on your watch, and this is how you stay in check. I disappointed my mother in Despelote by showing up dirty and at the wrong time, but I can assure you that's not my intent. I felt my eyes darting back and forth on the time and just got lost in a game of hide and seek before I realised my mistake. I'm trying to not speak about the game too much here, not totally for fear of spoiling it, as I firmly believe you have to just play it to get it, but partially because I only have so much b-roll and only have so much will to tell you about the feeling I got rather than the game. And that's because it's a rather simplistic game in nature. Despelote does go stranger as you go and more abstract, but never to the point of being alienating or alarming. There's this flow to everything that feels so natural, even if it only lasts a little while. Despelote is that moment as a rocket hurtles into space, the inertia continuing to propel you forward, and you don't yet need to deploy any course correction. Moments prior, your feet were on the ground, but now you float above it. However, your body hasn't quite got accustomed yet, and you aren't used to this feeling. For one brilliant moment, you feel like you're flying. And those are my thoughts on Despelote. It's an interesting game and one I'd recommend checking out. It is fairly short, and the gameplay is satisfying, but I wouldn't say satisfying in the way that a lot of games are. And I could see this really putting people off. I think if someone told me they disliked it for pretty much the exact reasons I liked it, I could get where they're coming from. If you do happen to check the game out, let me know. Let me know what you think, what you liked, what you disliked. I'd love to hear people's thoughts. I think one of my favorite parts of checking out these games is being able to form that opinion before everyone else has got to it and just seeing how people react once it's out there. That can end up with people being quite mad at you, which I don't normally mind, or that people agreeing with you or affirming you, and that's fun in its own way too. Thank you for listening to me talk about this for a while. And if you have any games that are coming out in the future or have recently launched that you think I should check out, do let me know. I have a lot of projects in the works right now. Some stuff that's not out yet, some stuff that has been out a little while, and I'm trying to sort of get my head around it. I'm very busy, but in a way that I'm really thankful to be, and is very exciting to me. Anyway, if you want to make me more busy, please subscribe, please like, please comment. Did I just say please? That was a total. It's late, and my lips don't know what they're doing past 12. That's a really strange sentence. Anyway, yes, it would really help if you subscribed, liked, all those things, because number go up is very satisfying, but also it means that there are people out there who like to hear what I say about things. I definitely acknowledge I get a bit into the weeds here, a little bit philosophical, and I know that puts some people off. So it's cool that people are sticking around. Anyway, thank you for watching, listening, all those things. And if you do check the game out, let me know. Thanks.